Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We start the video 2 of chapter 2, which is on the O-level biology syllabus 5090, and this is the new syllabus for 2023. Now in this video we're going to discuss this 2.2, which is features of organisms. State the main features used to place organisms into one of the 5 kingdoms: animal, plant, fungus, prokaryote, protoctist. State the main features used to place organism into groups within the animal kingdom, limited to the main groups: vertebrates, mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibian, and fish. Then the main group of arthropods, in which we have myriapods, insects, arachnids, and crustaceans. State the main features used to place organism into groups within the plant kingdom, limited to only 2: ferns and flowering plants. And in the flowering plants, we have to do dicotyledons and monocotyledons. Then classify organisms, the features using the features identified in all these 3 subdivisions. State the main features of virus, limited to protein coat and genetic material. Understand that the virus can only replicate in living cells, so they are total parasites. Now I'm going to go into more details about 2.2 in this video. Now the first thing is to place all the organisms according to their features into a 5 kingdom classification. Means we can put all the living organisms into 5 categories. The first one is animal, which is usually multicellular, which is always multicellular, not usually. Plants are always multicellular. Fungus are multicellular, but some unicellular, like we have yeast, which is a unicellular fungus, but mushroom is a multicellular fungus. Then prokaryotes are only bacteria, so they'll always be unicellular. Protoctista are mostly unicellular, but there could be some multi. They want you to be talking about a few of the very multicellular ones as well. And the example is protozoa, Plasmodium, which is the causative organism of malaria. So please remember now, that is not a bacteria. Bacteria is something else. Bacterial diseases are cured by antibiotics. Protozoal diseases are not cured by antibiotics. Now another very good way of, I want you to sort of memorize this. So I got you these different diagrams on this. So this the animal, you can say multicellular here. And then you can say plant is always multicellular. Tree, you remember, always keep a tree in mind when you're talking about plant. And animals, keep a fish or you can keep a human being or a monkey in mind. Then fungi are multicellular cell. The more important thing is that in animals there are no cell walls. In plants the cell walls are made up of cellulose. And in fungi the cell walls are not made up of cellulose, but they're made up of chitin, which is something else, which is not different chemically, it's different. Now protoctists, look, mostly unicellular, a few are multicellular. So the protoctists are unicellular mostly, complex cell structures, but they have a proper nucleus. Now proper nucleus is where proper nucleus is here, proper nucleus is here, and fungi also have a proper nucleus. So all these 4 have proper nucleus, but this one does not have a proper nucleus. So I like to do the comparison, what is present in this and what is not present in that. So that makes you all remember it very well. So protoctists do have a nucleus, but prokaryotes, which are bacteria, so please remember them. A very easy way to remember is them like this, BP. But then P is also protoctista, so be careful, prokaryotes. And if you look at very advanced books, of course, these are all then classified under eukaryotes. But eukaryotes is not mentioned in your syllabus, so I'm not going to be talking about that. So prokaryotes and eukaryotes, animal, we call it animalia, but animals, plants, fungus, and protoctists. So these are all the ones which have a nucleus. Only the ones which are bacteria do not have a nucleus, do not have a proper nuclear membrane. Now looking at a little more detail, just giving a little more points that I want to give you from my point of view. Animals, monkeys, elephants, examples, proper nucleus, which means that they're prokaryote, that means they're eukaryotes. They're all multicellular, they have membrane-bound organelles like mitochondria present, and they're heterotrophs. They can't make their own food. They're not like plants, convert light energy to chemical energy. but they can eat ready-made food and then, of course, digest it and absorb it. Then plants, proper nucleus again, eukaryote autotrophs, and they're all multicellular. And chloroplasts, they convert light energy into chemical energy. And examples are a mango tree or a rose bush. Then we have fungus, mushroom, yeast, some multicellular, some unicellular, because you have to remember the yeast cell. You have to remember yeast cell is a fungus. So they are unicellular, but mostly they are multicellular, like a mushroom is a multicellular. Then no chloroplasts, they cannot make their own food, they're not autotrophs, they release enzymes and extracellular digestion takes place. They have a proper nucleus, so they would be classified under eukaryotes. Their cell wall is made up of chitin. It's not cellulose. Like in plants, it's cellulose. Then we come to the next category, protoctist. They are mostly unicellular. Some do not have a cell wall, some do have a cell wall. They have a proper nucleus. They are eukaryotes. There's some autotrophs, some heterotrophs. The autotroph is chlorella, which I've given you here, and amoeba, plasmodium. These are the protozoas, which are the unicellular animals. Unicellular animals. So that's make it easy for you to remember. Plasmodium causes malaria, which you will study later. And so coming to the next one, prokaryotes, they're always bacteria. So BP, remember bacteria, prokaryotes, unicellular, there's no nucleus, there's no nuclear membrane. When I say no nucleus, I mean no nuclear membrane. The cell wall is not made of cellulose, not of chitin, but it's made up of peptidoglycan. Peptido means there's a protein present, and glycan means there's a carbohydrate present, glycogen. So it makes sense if you understand them from correlating other words with it. It has a loop of DNA and the ribosome is present. So if there is DNA and ribosomes, that means they can make their own proteins. Extracellular digestion takes place. Example is E. coli, which is a form of bacteria. Now the next topic is we have to know the features of the animal kingdom and the main group of vertebrates. Now what are vertebrates? Vertebrates are those which have a vertebral column, which have a backbone. And they are non-vertebrates which don't have a backbone. Now the main headings which you have to understand is birds, fish, amphibians, reptiles, and mammals. And I made a mnemonic for a bee farm. So birds, fish, amphibians, reptiles, and mammals. First, let's get these names because we need to remember these. And it's difficult for you all to remember things because you are the generation which finds it difficult to memorize stuff. So it's okay. Well, you have to make some mnemonics to actually remember these terms. So birds, fish, amphibians, reptiles, and mammals. Now, what are vertebrates? The animal with a skeleton, and I've shown you this vertebral column. It is made up of the cervical vertebrae and the thoracic and the lumbar and the sacrum, but you don't have to know these names, but I just want you to understand what are vertebrates. And the animals without the skeleton are these ones, which are the ones which do not have a skeleton. These are the animals which have a skeleton. Then if you look at this, what is the vertebral column? It's made up of vertebrae. And these vertebrae are put together, and here you've got the spinal cord here. So the spinal cord passes through this. There's a hole which is continuous, and the spinal cord passes through that. And you have this is the body of the vertebrae, and the vertebrae is made up of bones. And in between the vertebrae, you've got a disc, which sometimes people say they have a slip disc. So I just want to know a little more about the vertebral column and what it actually is made up of. Now, whenever you're doing a comparison, it is always a good idea is to compare like with like. Like for instance, now we've got all these here. Now, let's look at it. Amphibian are cold-blooded. So I'm writing C here, cold-blooded. Now these are warm-blooded. This is again cold-blooded, then warm-blooded, and then cold-blooded. So you see only mammals and birds are warm-blooded. Reptiles, fish, and amphibians are cold-blooded. Then coming to lungs and gills. Now, amphibians, you can see the frog, and that's a very good example. They can also lungs and they also have gills, so they can live in the water as well as they can live on land. Now, these breathe with lungs. Birds have lungs. Now, similarly, These fish have gills. They don't have lungs at all because they stay in the water. They can't come on land. And mammals have, as you all know, we all have lungs. So lungs, and also the reptiles have lungs. They do not have gills. So lungs and gills is only in amphibian. Then this is only lungs. Birds only have lungs. Then fish have gills. They don't have any lungs. Mammal have lungs and reptile have lungs. So you do a comparative analysis. Amphibian lungs and gills, birds lungs, fish only gills, mammal lungs and reptile lungs. So this is how you do a comparison between these different. Now let's come to another thing. Now about the skin. The skin is the most important. So the amphibians have a smooth, moist skin. Now the warm-blooded have birds do not have skin. They have feathers. Then here we have the fish. They lay eggs. They have fins. The mammals have hair or fur on their skin. And these reptiles, of course, have a very dry, scaly skin. So you must keep one in mind and then think of them. Like reptiles, you can think of one, and then mammal and fish and bird, and keep an example in your mind and make a mental map of it. And then, of course, you can understand it. Now another slightly more detailed one, amphibians, thin and humid skin, transformation through their life cycle. They change their breathing methods, lungs, gills, and skin. They're born from eggs, cold-blooded animals. They live on the ground and water. Fish, they live underwater. They breathe through gills. Some of them have scales covering their bodies. Fins help them to move underwater. Cold-blooded animals, they are born from eggs. Reptiles, the longest lived species on the planet, cold-blooded, body covered with scales or shell. They cannot chew, they are born from eggs, they live on the ground or in the water. Birds covered with feathers. They usually have porous, lightweight bones to allow them to fly. They live flying or on the ground. They have wings to fly. Their mouths are toothless beaks. Warm-blooded animals, they are born from eggs. Mammals, they are born alive from mothers. They breathe through lungs. They live in the water. They are on the ground. They have their bodies covered by fur. Warm-blooded. The next topic is main group of arthropods. So they have made a mnemonic for that for you all to remember. Crustaceans, arachnids, myriapods, and insects. The first thing is all arthropods have three key features. Number one, they have a tough exoskeleton. You see, we all have an endoskeleton. It's inside. We have the muscles on top of it. They have an exoskeleton. They have jointed appendages. That's why they're called arthropods, pods. And they have a segmented body. So these are the three things which are common to all arthropods. Arthropods examples are crabs, lobsters, centipedes, spiders, grasshoppers, and scorpions. They are invertebrates and they have an external skeleton and they have a segmented body, have jointed attachments called appendages. The wings, mouth parts, and legs. Arthro means joint and podos means foot or leg. They have bilateral symmetry, they have an open circulatory system, and they have a digestive system with two openings and they reproduce sexually. This is the jointed foot, largest phylum, 900,000 species, compound eyes, typical insects, spiders, crustaceans, millipedes, scorpions, ticks. Now, I would like to talk about some parts of the arthropod. First of all, the body is divided into three segments: head, thorax, and abdomen. Right? So, three parts: head, thorax, and abdomen. But some have the head and the thorax are joined, and that's called the cephalothorax. And then there's the abdomen. So the two differences, because you're going to be able to then differentiate between the different ones. Which ones have a cephalothorax and abdomen, which one have a head, thorax, and abdomen. So the head has mouth parts for feeding and various types of eyes, simple eyes, compound eyes. The thorax is the middle body region to which legs and wings are attached. The abdomen is the posterior end and bears additional legs and contains digestive structures and the reproductive organs. And let's be very clear about certain wordings that we are going to be using here. Segmented body. Segmented body means that the body is not in one continuous, but it's made of small, tiny segments joined together. Then there's an external skeleton which you have seen in lobsters and crabs. Even in a cockroach, you've got the external skeleton, because when you step on it, it makes that noise of breaking something, and that is the shell actually which cracks. And jointed appendages. So these are the words you must know before we go on to details of this group. Characteristics of insects: they are segments of fuse, they have a head, compound eyes, mouth part sucking, chewing, clapping, other paired appendages, thorax, three pairs of legs, wings, none, one, or two pair. So wings is very variable. They can be no wings, they can be one, they can be two pairs. And abdomen has the viscera and reproduction and digestion. Now just a quick look at the different lens. Simple lens eye, simple corneal eye, there's no lens in it, and then there's a compound eye. And insects and crustaceans, some mollusks and annelids, of course, also have compound eyes. So you must be able to make out which is a simple eye and which is a compound eye. Now, a quick look at the different ways they have. Crustaceans, they have a crust. I mean, they have a hard shell, and you can see this is the crab and the lobsters, all more than four pairs of jointed legs. That's the most important thing. And they have an outer, very thick, hard crust. Then myriapods are the ones which have myria. Myria means many, pods means many feet. They have many similar segments, each with at least one pair of jointed legs. So there's every segment, and every segment has a leg, joint pair of legs, jointed. So the legs have joints in them. So many segments, and then each one has a pair of legs. And we'll see some examples of this, which you can see here on this side. Then insecta is insect body divided into head, thorax, and abdomen. Six jointed legs and four wings attached to the thorax, but maybe less, of course, as well. Then arachnids. Now these are the ones which have a head and a cephalothorax. C and an H. Cephalothorax and head. And we have a C and an H here. So cephalothorax and head, four pairs of jointed legs. Now, this is the best comparison that I could possibly get, and I've done this for you all to understand. So, key features of insect, crustaceans, myriapods, and arachnids. Of course, the arthropods we have discussed earlier is that they have invertebrate, they have no backbone, they have an waterproof exoskeleton, they have a segmented body, and they have jointed legs. Now, let's do a comparison. Three pairs of jointed legs, more than four pairs of legs. Four pairs of legs. Each segment has jointed legs, more than nine pairs. Then next, let's do another one. One or two pairs of wings. Here we don't have any wings. No wings. And here we have no wings. So wings are only present in insects. This is a very key feature that you will understand to remember, that the other crustaceans, myriapods, and arachnids do not have any wings. Then look at another point now. If you look at all these, simultaneously, then you can understand them a little better. Three body parts: head, thorax, abdomen. I'm using the same color. Three body parts: head, thorax, and abdomen. In the crustaceans, there's the cephalothorax and the abdomen. In the arachnids, again, there is the cephalothorax and the abdomen. And I've talked about the cephalothorax earlier. Here, of course, there is no head, thorax, and abdomen. It's just a segmented body throughout. There is no demarcation of head, thorax, and abdomen. Then let's come to another very interesting point, is the compound eyes. There's one pair of compound eyes. Here we have also compound eyes. We do not have any mention of any. There's several. Sorry, there are several pairs of simple eyes here. Yes, and here they have simple eyes as well. So arachnids and myriapods have simple eyes, while insects have compound eyes and crustaceans have compound eyes. So compound eyes in insects, compound eyes in crustaceans, simple eyes in arachnids, and simple eyes in myriapods. So this is how we will do a comparison. Then another one, very nice one, is antennae. So one pair of antennae here. Here we have two pairs of antennae in crustaceans. In arachnids again two pairs of antennae. And in one pair of antennae as sense organs in dark habitats. So one pair of antennae in insects. Crustaceans have two pairs of antennae. And arachnids have two pairs of antennae. And myriapods have one pair of antennae. So insects and myriapods have one pair of antennae, and crustaceans and arachnids have two pairs of antennae. I know this is very difficult, but I'm trying to make it easier for you to remember these. I hope it's becoming easier. Now coming to the classification of plants, we only have to study two different categories, and the one is number one, plants which make seeds, and plants which do not make seeds. So in the seeds one, what we have to understand is the flowering plants, and in the ones which do not make seeds, we have to study the ferns. So the ferns is the one that we have to study, and the flowering plants is the one that we have to study. Now in the flowering plants, you can see we have to study the monocots and the dicots. So monocotyledons and dicotyledons are the ones in which the seeds have one cotyledon or two cotyledons. Mono means one, di means two. And in the non-flowering, we have got to study the ferns. Now the key features of flowering plants is they have root, stems and leaves. And they have xylem and phloem, and they reproduce by producing seeds. So they'd have a flower, and then we'd study flowering and seed production and fertilization and seed production, then seed dispersal. And seeds are produced inside the ovary, inside the flower, and asexual reproduction is also possible in certain plants. Now the ferns, they're different. Now I've given you pictures of this. This is a flowering plant and this is a fern. Ferns and their relatives have vascular tissue and use spores to reproduce. And vascular plants are better suited to live on life on land than on our non-vascular plants. So vascular plants means they have xylem and phloem, but they do not produce any seeds, so they have no flowers. And they have no flowers, no ovule, no seeds. And they produce by a special mechanism which is called, they use spores to reproduce. Now flowering plants are classified into two different categories, monocots and dicot, and the leaf shape is very important, plus the seed is very important. Now as you can see here, I put a diagram of the seeds. Dicotyledon seeds have two cotyledons, and this is the cotyledons. So they have two cotyledons. You see this in peanuts. Then the maize seed, you see there's only one cotyledon. So examples are in the bean seed is dicot, maize, corn which you eat is monocot. But the important other differences between the leaves and the venation, leaf veins. Now you can see these are parallel veins, and they are found more in grasses. And if you just look at the grass, go out and look at the grass, you can see these leaves. And this was a network of veins. You see this is the midrib, and then there's a network of veins. Now, there's no such network in the monocots, but this is a network which you see in the dicot. So, branching network of veins, while these veins are called parallel venation or parallel veins. And the seed leaf means we were talking about the dicot is one and there's two. So, these are the main differences between monocot and dicot. Thank you for watching. Another video will follow which will have the last part of it, the virus part in it, and it will have some questions on this chapter. so that I can help you understand what is the amount of level of understanding that you must have to be able to do the MCQs on this. Thank you very much. Thank you for subscribing, and thank you for watching.